Hi, this is Dr. Daphne Wiles, and this is a recorded webinar for MZC1 covering the role of research in education, which is covered in Chapter 1 in the e-text. The learning objectives for the role of research in education are to be able to recognize the impact and the value of research on educational practice. So understand how research influences the things that happen in a classroom. And then also be able to talk about the role of research in educational psychology. So the main points about the role of research in education are, the first one is that it's not always common sense. So sometimes there's something happening in the classroom, such as teachers believing that if they scold students that their behavior will improve. But then research will tell us that that's not actually an effective strategy for behavior modification. And so sometimes there are ideas or practices occurring in a classroom, and then someone will research that and find that what we thought was just common sense might not be true. There are things called principles, and principles explain the relationship between factors. So, for instance, if there's an alternative grading system is a factor and student motivation is a factor, and we want to see what's the effect of this alternative grading system on student motivation, and we find that there is an effect, then that's going to be a principle. Laws are principles that have been thoroughly tested and found to apply in a wide variety of situations. So if you found that there was this relationship between an alternative grading system and student motivation, and then you tried that out in maybe elementary school and middle school and high school, and you tried it out in a science classroom and a language arts classroom and a history classroom, and you just kept finding that this was really showing to be true, then that could eventually become a law. And then a theory is a set of related principles and laws that ends up explaining a broad aspect of some sort of learning or behavior or some other area of interest. Research will help you as a teacher to make informed decisions. So you're going to have things happen in your classroom. For instance, you have a student who blurts out answers without raising his or her hand. And this is a situation that you would like to change. You know, you want students to adhere to conventions in the classroom, and one of those is raising your hand before you speak. You have to understand research to know kind of the different effects that can happen with whatever decision you make to address this problem. So for instance, you could reprimand the student, but if the student wants to just get attention, then reprimanding might not be the most effective strategy. You can ignore the situation, but that doesn't give the child any extra attention, but it also could cause the child to escalate in his or her behavior in order to get your attention. Maybe you give the student detention or have them miss recess, or you can go another way. You could offer the child incentives for each time that he or she does raise their hand, and so accentuate the positive there. So, there's research about all of these different tactics, and as a teacher, you need to understand the research behind those, and then understand your own students and know what will work for them. It's very important as a teacher to take advantage of professional development opportunities. And one of the reasons is because that is where a lot of research is disseminated. So you go to a conference on children with special needs, and you learn about ways to help a child with dyslexia. Maybe there's been a huge research study, and the way that researchers can get the word out is through professional development opportunities. They have conferences, or they will put out a white paper, or sometimes they publish it in journals. And so it is your job as a teacher to be a consumer of that research. so that you can then take it and apply it in your own classroom. And then we've seen the impact that research can have on educational practices in lots of ways. For instance, classroom policies, for instance, starting to lock the doors on a school during during instructional hours. That's a policy that came from research on how to help keep schools safe. Procedures in a classroom, for instance, knowing like the optimal time to have students eat lunch or maybe go to PE or when they should learn math, all these different types of procedures within a classroom. Then research is part of professional development programs. Those can take place sometimes in your school. I know when I was a teacher, we had once a month, our Wednesday morning faculty meeting was some sort of professional development program. And the research that is out there impacts not only what's covered at professional development programs, but also the manner in which the information is conveyed to teachers. Research impacts curriculum. You can see this in a huge way right now because of the introduction of Common Core standards and next generation science standards. So the research that was done on those initiatives is impacting the curriculum and also teaching materials. We move more from individualized instruction into group instruction and a lot of times hands-on materials within those groups. There's research on class size, how many students should be in a classroom, what the ratio of students to teachers or paraprofessionals should be, and then just instructional strategies. How do you deal with the student that blurts out answers, things like that. And there are lots of others, lots of things that go on in a classroom that have all been impacted by research. So that's what we have for the role of research in education. If you have any questions, please feel free to email a course mentor at our group inbox, which is edpsych@wgu.edu. Thank you.